Rebecca Parson. She's a candidate running to represent Washington's 6th congressional district. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Adrienne. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yes, and the primary election is just 5 days away for you, which would be August 4th, 2020. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. You know, we have, it's a top 2 primary here like California. So it's me, the incumbent Democrat, and 4 Republicans running against each other in kind of a free for all on August 4th. And the Republicans never get more than about 1/3 of the vote. So it's actually looking pretty good that they'll split the vote. And then it would be me versus the incumbent Democrat in the general.
Let's talk about that incumbent Democrat, Derek Kilmer. And I think recently he happens to be on the Appropriations Committee. And he voted to increase funding for the Department of Homeland Security, increasing that to about 50.72 billion earlier this month. And now DHS agents, they're in the streets doing their clandestine kidnapping thing of people in Portland, unmarked vans, all sorts of chaos. What do you think this really says and resonates to your constituents?
I've heard from a lot of people here who are really worried. You know, we're not far away from Portland, and actually the feds are reported to be on their way to Olympia and Seattle, so on either side of Tacoma. And people are really worried. And I think it says that my opponent, Representative Derek Kilmer, is not on our side, because when he did that vote on July 15th on the Appropriations Committee, their DHS agents were kidnapping protesters in unmarked vans on the streets of Portland the day he made that vote. And so I think it shows that he's really out of touch, because DHS is essentially acting as Trump's secret police right now. And I don't know why a Democrat would give them $50 billion while they're doing that.
No, don't really know either, especially right now in the midst of this pandemic. And today we learned, unfortunately, that it just hit over 150,000 deaths. And I know you're very passionate about reinforcing Social Security as well as ensuring Medicare for all. Why do you think it's taking so long for Americans to really kind of get on this bandwagon that we need to have protections for everyone?
I think it's a lot of lies and misleading information from the president, and also Democrats who are failing to stand up to him and just giving him what he wants. So we see, for example, my opponent, Representative Derek Kilmer, on June 1st, joined with Republicans to sign a letter supporting Mitt Romney's Trust Act, which is, as Social Security Works put it, a plot to gut Social Security behind closed doors. Kilmer was the only Democrat in Washington state who signed this letter. 24% of the 6th district is on Social Security. We have the highest number of people on Social Security of any congressional district in Washington state. And now we see during the coronavirus relief package that Congress is debating, they are debating putting elements of the Trust Act to cut Social Security in the coronavirus relief package. So here we are, the worst pandemic in 100 years, and they're talking about cutting Social Security while giving billions of dollars to the Pentagon. And we have Republicans and Trump to thank for that, but also their Democratic enablers, like my opponent, Representative Derek Kilmer, says he opposes Donald Trump, but then he votes for Trump's favorite policies like this.
Wow, it's almost like Kilmer is masquerading as a Democrat, but is really kind of a Republican, which is very problematic. And the thing is, I looked up about your district. I guess it's among those that's kind of has some pivot counties. One of the 206 counties that voted for Donald Trump after voting for Obama in the previous years. So how do you think this fluidity is impacting your approach?
Well, it's interesting because one of those counties, Grace Harbor County, they went for Bernie in 2016 in the primary and Trump in the general. And that was the first time they had gone for Republican in the general in 90 years. And if you look at the results, as I have precinct by precinct in Aberdeen for this presidential, you see precincts right next to each other that went Bernie, Trump, all right next to each other. And what that says to me is that people are tired of corporate politicians and they want a populist. And Trump, in my opinion, is a fake populist. And somebody like Bernie Sanders, maybe Elizabeth Warren, they're real populists, especially Bernie Sanders. And that's what people want. And I've talked to people on the Olympic Peninsula, before the pandemic, I was out canvassing a lot. I have friends who grew up there, and they said that even among Republicans, very, hardcore Republicans in rural parts of the Olympic Peninsula, their favorite politician is FDR. And I asked him why, and he said, well, FDR was the last president who visited their communities, but also there were 7 civilian conservation corps camps on the Olympic Peninsula. So we need a jobs program. And so what I found with my approach, talking to people in these counties, that yes, they're Obama-Trump counties, but they're also Bernie Trump counties. And so I talk to them and say, how will these policies affect your life? And I'm not taking any corporate money. Republicans, Democrats, centrists, everybody hates corporate money. And so I just talk to them about how will the policies affect your life and how am I working for populist policies? And I found that to be really effective.
having your constituents go from, Obama to Bernie or Trump, it just really shows that they want change, that they're invested in seeing something different. And it seems that you have a really strong background coming from a patriotic family with your father being in the Foreign Service, and also your grandfather, retired Army colonel. I know you served in AmeriCorps as an educator. How has your background and life experiences really shaped your beliefs in terms of what you can bring to your constituents?
Yeah, well, growing up in my family, I grew up overseas till I was 12, but we would visit on home leave every 2 years, visit my grandparents. And I really got a strong sense of patriotism in my family, but it was never jingoistic. And my grandfather really believed in serving his country and in the oath that he took at West Point. And the oath is the same one that my father as a foreign service officer took. It's the same one that I would take as a member of Congress, which is to protect and uphold the Constitution. It doesn't say anything about protecting and upholding the president. And so that's what I bring to this is the values of our country. The Constitution is flawed. It was flawed from the beginning, and we're constantly trying to perfect it. But that is the basis, and that's what I believe in. And I think that does resonate with people in the district because while I have very progressive policies, I'm endorsed by DSA National, Our Revolution, Sunrise Tacoma, all these very progressive organizations. When I talk to people who don't describe themselves as progressive or leftist, but they're working a job and trying to get by, and they can't afford childcare, and they live in a town where the timber industry collapsed, 30 years ago, and nothing came to replace it. I can connect with them on some of these, parts of my background. And it also helps me really connect to them, look back to our country's history, the times that we've done really bold things before. Social Security started during the Great Depression. And so when people say I'm scared, and how are we gonna pay for this stuff? We're in the middle of this crisis. We don't have any money. The federal debt's gotten even greater. It's like, well, we started Social Security during the Great Depression. So we can do this kind of thing again. And I find that to be persuasive.
Absolutely. And I know you'd have your work cut out for you just because, unfortunately, how Congress has done business for as long as it has, but bringing in fresh minds and perspectives is so incredibly important. And I know we spent a fair amount of time talking about your platform and what you stand for. Let's have a little fun and talk about you. So during this quarantine, what have you learned about yourself?
Well, I have learned that, I've worked from home for a long time, and I have learned just how much I had set up my life to, continue to be out and about, really involved in the community. I mean, I always knew that, but then being at home, it's like, wow, this is really different. I had always worked from home, but it's very different. Just me and my dog working from home, running a campaign from home. So I love being out in the community, and I have a very large district. So I love going on long drives and going all over the district and meeting people. I just really miss that.
It sounds beautiful, and I'm sure it's just gorgeous up there. Although, it's not Cali. But hey, what can you say? But so something I love asking people, because I think it's a very strange question, but I think it's an opening into the minds of individuals. We all have an irrational fear out there. Some people are afraid of birds. Some people will not drive behind that car that has, a ladder on top of it for fear of it coming through their window. What is your irrational fear?
Flocks of birds, they just kind of freak me out. I think I've never seen the movie Birds because I don't want to scare myself even more. But my imagined scenes of that movie come into my head when I see flocks of birds.
I can respect that. And I've talked to a lot of athletes, and for some reason, even these big men they fear birds considerably.
Yeah.
I don't know, to each his own. But I guess let me ask you too, because you do have to have your ear to the ground in terms of everything that's going on right now in the world, in media, in politics. What do you think is not getting the attention that should be of concern to everyone right now?
Housing, definitely housing. It's something that local activists work on a lot in their communities across the country, but federal politicians barely talk about it, and they barely do anything about it. But even before this coronavirus pandemic, it was at crisis levels. Here in Tacoma, we have one of the fastest rising rates of rent in the country. One town in my district called Aberdeen, where Kurt Cobain was from, it has a population of 16,000 and 1,000 homeless people, which is just staggering. If you think 1 in 16 people in this little town with a small budget, that really shows you that something is wrong with our housing system. And it's even worse right now. We have a wave of evictions coming up, and politicians, corporate politicians are sitting there talking about how are we gonna bail out the Pentagon, and like my opponent co-sponsoring a bill to bail out corporate lobbyists, that they're the ones who really need help during this pandemic. So I think we need to be talking about housing a lot more.
And I know you would definitely are committed to that. based on everything I know about your stance and in speaking to you. And so can you tell the viewers where they can find you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, rebeccaforwa.com, that's FOR. Sign up to volunteer or donate if you can. We've already made over 700,000 calls to voters in the district. We have the best organizers in the country who came from the Bernie campaign, working on my campaign here in the 6th district, and we would love your help. We're canvassing, phone banking, we're not canvassing, we're phone banking several times a day, every day. So appreciate your help.
Absolutely, and the election is August 4th. Vote Parson. Thanks so much for coming on, Rebecca. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.